Hey, hello there. Welcome. It's Brian Manning. I'm a political asylum lawyer. My law firm is called Manning Asylum Law, and we help people all over the country to secure their future in the United States through asylum. Our law firm is based in Houston, but we help people all over the country. So, wanted to go live and say a couple of words before we start taking your questions. So, get your questions ready. Go ahead and leave them in the comments if you want. If you're watching this on Facebook, you can actually request to join in with me. Yeah, you can request to join in and be on video. And in fact, ask your question live on video and I'll answer it. So here's what I wanted to say. Hey, what's up, Joe Pop? Thanks, man. So, hey, Brian. Here's what I want to say just for a couple of minutes before we get to the question and answers. All right. So, I get this question all the time. Should I encourage my family member or friend to come to the US border to apply for asylum? Now, this is tough, okay? Ultimately, I can't give the answer to in general or even to in a one-on-one real situation with a client or a potential client. I really cannot advise them and just say, yes, do it or no, do not do it. What I can say is that it's tough, okay? Generally speaking, if I had to come down on one side or the other, I would more so recommend against it. I would say, don't come to the U.S. border to seek asylum. Don't encourage your family to do it either, because there's a lot of uncertainty, and really, first and foremost, it's dangerous. Okay, coming and traveling through Mexico, a lot of those towns and areas along the border that you're going to be coming up to are really dangerous. Bad things happen to people who are crossing through to try to come to the border to seek asylum. Okay, so that's the first thing, is it's dangerous. All right. The second thing is that you never really know what's going to happen. Okay. US government policy about how to deal with this, with people who have come to the border, changes all the time. Okay. One minute they're saying, yeah, you can come in and we'll let you come into the country and you can seek asylum. The next minute they're saying, no, you can't even, we're not even going to let you come in, and we're not going to accept any kind of asylum claim at all from you. Or another time they might be saying, okay, we're going to put you in line, basically. We're going to take your name down and you go back and wait in Mexico while we work down the list. And eventually we'll send you a message that you need to come, and you get to come in to go to a court just over the border, and then you go back to Mexico. So there's a whole lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen and whether you'll even be able to apply to come into the United States or apply for asylum. And this changes with policies that the president makes, basically, and it also changes with court decisions by judges that are constantly changing things around. So the other thing is that you're going to be detained. If you come to the U.S. border and seek asylum, you're going to be detained at least for a few hours. Very good chance that it will be a few days, but it could be a lot longer. It could be weeks or even months that you're going to be detained, okay? And the detentions, the conditions in detention can be very difficult, okay? So especially if you're thinking about coming with children, you might want to think about that, the fact that you're going to be detained and you don't know for how long, and it could be very difficult, tough conditions. So those are a few reasons not to come to the U.S. southern border to apply. But let's be honest, what other option do you have if you don't have a U.S. visa that's going to allow you to get into the country legally, or to get all the way into the country and then apply for asylum affirmatively? What other choice do you have? Well, you just have to balance and can take everything into account and balance. Okay, well, am I at risk? At how much risk am I in my home country? How bad is it? And then, do I have any other options? Is there another country that I could try going to where I might be able to get asylum, where maybe there's a little bit more certainty, or somewhere where you could at least stay long term without fear of being harmed there and without fear of having to go back to your country? So those are things that you got to consider, okay? And ultimately, only you can decide, right, whether it's worth the risk and worth the hardship for you or your family to come and seek asylum at the border, or not, or to do something else, right? So it's a tough decision, and I would never, there are some things where people say, what do you think? And I'll give them a straight up answer. I think you should do this, right? Concretely, I think you should do this, or I think you should not do this. But this is not one of those areas where I can really say that. Okay, I just have to educate people about what some of the risks are. I mean, people understand the benefits. You can possibly get asylum and stay here permanently. And 1 year after you get asylum, you're eligible to get a green card based on your asylee status. And 4 years after that, you're eligible to get U.S. citizenship. So everyone, or not everyone knows those benefits, but everyone knows the benefits of coming to the United States, and applying for asylum can be big. But they don't always think about the costs and risks, especially when you're coming to the border. Okay, so I just want to make a note of that, so you can consider carefully what's best for you and your family. Okay, so I'm gonna take some questions. Let's see. Dama says, "Oh, that wasn't your question." Let's see. Did you leave the rest of your question, Dama? It looks like I got cut off, Dama. I wanted what? What did you want? What is your question? Let me know. By the way, if you guys decide that you want to talk in detail about your situation and see if we might be able to help you or give some advice, feel free to call us. The number is above, and now it should be at the bottom of the screen going by, 713-909-0401. You can call and set up a consultation with me to talk about what's going on, and we'll be happy to tell you what we think, what I think, and whether I think we can help you and what your options are. Okay, so let's take a couple of questions now. So okay, this is a good one. This is an interesting one. Brian Ivan says, if they approved your request for shortlist, when can you expect the interview? Now, Brian, when you say they approved your request for shortlist, I assume you mean they approved your request to be on the shortlist, right? Like to be listed on the shortlist. Man, unfortunately, it does not necessarily mean that you're going to get the interview call anytime soon. I have a client in Boston whom we got on the shortlist at the Boston Asylum office probably 6 months ago, and they still haven't gotten the call. Okay, so it's definitely not a guarantee, but it helps. It can only help, right, to get on it. You do have a chance of getting your interview soon, and sooner at least. So you should, for the offices that do have a short list, if you want to get your interview, then sure, ask to be on it. But unfortunately, Brian, I can't tell you that it's going to definitely or even likely result in you getting the interview shortly or soon. But you got to be ready, because you could get it very soon. You could get it within a week of getting on it. So you do need to be ready. All right, and there's a lot that you can do to improve your chances for success. Even though, Brian, you've obviously already applied. I don't know whether you use a lawyer or not, but either way, even if you did, I promise you there's things that we could do to help you strengthen your case. As long as I think that you have some chance of winning, like if you have a chance of winning, then I will think that we can help you increase your chances, probably pretty significantly. So let me know, Brian. You and I have gone back and forth with these questions. I've seen you on here before. It's time for you to call and talk to us in an asylum strategy session so we can help you out, man. I hope you will. All right. I want to address this question by Saidu Aminu. How should someone behave during their interview? You got to behave respectfully. Okay. You do need to give a little bit of deference to the authority of the asylum officer. I'm not saying you need to like bow down to them or grovel, but you do need to come off as someone who's respecting the process and the authority that this officer has and their position and the gravity of the situation, which by that I mean you shouldn't be joking around, playing around at your interview. It's not the time for that. Okay. You need to listen carefully and give direct, short answers to the questions being asked. Okay. I've got a whole lot of tips in general about how to handle yourself and what to do in an asylum interview, but to try to answer your specific questions, Saidu, how should someone behave? You should behave respectfully and thoughtfully and carry yourself with dignity and grace. That's a little bit nebulous, I know, but I hope that gives you a sense. Check out, Saidu, go to my YouTube channel. It looks like you're watching this on YouTube. So go to Manning Asylum Law on YouTube, and there's a video that's called "How to Answer Questions in an Asylum Interview." I think you'll like that. It's kind of long. It's very detailed. Not so much about like how to act, but how to think about the questions that are being asked, and like a framework and context for how to come up with your answers. It's telling the truth, always telling the truth. But beyond that, there's certain ways that we have to make decisions about how we answer questions. And this video, I talk through some of those things. So Saidu, go to Manning Asylum Law YouTube and check out the video that says how to answer questions at your asylum interview. Or if you just Google that, you should be able to find that video. Okay. Okay. So Mr. Good says, what's the chance to win asylum under the Biden administration? Well, I don't know, because they haven't really published statistics. This is a shame, and it's something that the American Immigration Lawyers Association that I'm part of, and I'm on a national committee for asylum and refugee matters for it. And this committee recently raised this issue to the director of the part of USCIS that's in charge of asylum, saying, listen, you need to be open and transparent and provide us with data and statistics about what's going on with affirmative asylum, because they have not released this in the past. For a long time, USCIS has been pretty good about releasing statistics and data, but they haven't done that in a long time, like a couple of years. So, or at least not in any meaningful way. So it's hard to say that, like, concretely, that the Biden administration is easier in terms of statistics. But I can tell you anecdotally, and just based on common sense, that yeah, it's higher definitely than under the last administration. Why? Well, most concretely, because there's been changes in policy and the way that USCIS interprets the law and the way they treat certain kinds of cases, that will mean that a lot more people are winning asylum than was the case under the Trump administration. But also just in terms of an overall sort of attitude and ethos and culture that permeates throughout the immigration agencies, including USCIS, there's just a bit more of a pro-immigrant attitude. I wouldn't say that USCIS is overall pro-immigrant. I was really shocked when I became an asylum officer to learn how many anti-immigrant people there were at USCIS that are trying to find ways to deny your case, excuses to deny your case. But to get back to your question, yeah, the chances of winning asylum under the Biden administration overall, yeah, are higher. They're definitely higher. Okay. Okay. Layla in Washington, or I'm not sure if that's your last name or you're saying you're in Washington, whatever the case, she says, Layla says asylum status pending for more than 5 years. It's hard to get hold of USCIS. What to do? So two different questions in there that I'm going to address. How do you get a hold of them, and what to do, or about your case that's been pending for 5 years, are two different things, in my opinion. What to do about a case that's been pending for 5 years? You should sue the government. Okay. It's called a mandamus lawsuit. And you're asking a federal judge to make USCIS give you a decision, strike that, in your case, an interview, give you an interview in your case, okay? Because the government needs to act in a reasonable period of time on any immigration request. And while it's not set in stone or crystal clear what is reasonable, anything outside of 1 year starts to be not very reasonable, and 5 years is definitely not reasonable. So you have some leverage or some power to be able to force USCIS to take action. So you should sue. I think you should sue the government to make them give you an interview. Okay. But then the other part of your question, where you say it's hard to get hold of USCIS, I don't think you need to get a hold of them to do this, but if you have some other reason that you want to get in contact with them, so you call the 1-800 number. And this is, they call this the contact center. That's their customer service name. You call that number and you can just Google USCIS contact center, and you'll get the number. And when the computer automated recording picks up and starts talking, say the words info pass. That's INFOPASS, info pass. And that may get you through to a human. That's like a trick that lawyers use. It's a long story behind why that is something you could say that would help you. But just try that. That often works. Info pass, okay? And then you might be able to get through to a human, all right? So like I said, my name is Brian Manning, and I'm a political asylum lawyer. I used to be an asylum officer with USCIS. I worked at the Houston Asylum Office. And before that, I was a diplomat. And in that capacity, I did visa work as well as a consular officer. So I've done visas and asylum, and I've worked at the two main agencies that the U.S. government has for refugee and asylum affairs. And now as an asylum lawyer, I help people all over the country to secure their future in the United States through asylum. All right, next question is from, I'm going to skip that one. All right, so Alan says, can I apply for an EB-2 visa if I already have a pending asylum case? The answer is maybe. So here's how it works. The fact that you have an asylum case pending in and of itself will definitely not stop you from applying for or getting an EB-2 or any other kind of status or visa, okay? There's no rule that says you can't apply for or get something else just because you have applied for asylum and you have that case pending. So that's the good news. But it's a bit more complicated than that, because whether you can go on to get a different status is determined by other factors as well, including like whether you had status before you applied for asylum, and also there's just some complications concerning the question of whether having asylum pending is something that you can change from into a new status. And honestly, that's a question probably when you have a lawyer for your EB-2 visa, I would ask them about that. It's not really in my area that I focus on. It's just asylum and winning asylum cases. So for questions about, is it possible to switch into something else, I would go to a lawyer that focuses on the kind of status that you want to get. So in your case, a lawyer, you're going to find some immigration lawyers focus on like investment and business and employment-based visas. That's the kind of lawyer that you should talk to, I think, to try to get more certainty around that question. But I can tell you with confidence, the good news is that just having applied for asylum will not in and of itself keep you from getting any other status, okay? So that's good. Saidu says, is it cool to look at their faces during the interview? Yes, good question. Different cultures have different ways that they approach interpersonal communication and different ways that they deal with like authority figures. And that's why your question is one that a lot of people will have is, should I make eye contact? Is it okay to make eye contact? Is it okay to look at them? Or should I just kind of look down away from them? No, it's completely fine and normal. And in fact, good to make eye contact. I think you should try to make eye contact look at them and make eye contact. Okay. But good question, because that's something that comes up a lot. A lot of people have that question. Okay. Okay. So I've already gone with one from Alan, but I'm going to go with another one because this is an important topic that I like to talk about. So good question. Does having a lot of supporting documents at the interview, is it a bother to asylum officers? Is it annoying to asylum officers? So here's what I think about that. If you've got documents that are relevant, that either help to show that what you're saying has happened, or what you're saying is going to happen, probably is going to happen, then that's good, and you want to include those. Also, if you have what we call country of origin information, reports from your country that show that the conditions are such that someone like you is likely to get hurt there, or that the government is unlikely to really seriously try to help you or to be able to help you, then protect you, then that's relevant too. But here's the problem. And many applicants, including immigration lawyers, do this too all the time. And it's a big mistake. They'll Google the country's name and they'll Google like reports or human rights report, and they'll print off the U.S. State Department's human rights report and a couple other reports from non-governmental organizations. And it'll be like 200 pages, and they'll just stack them up and they'll just slap it behind the asylum application form, thinking that the officer might find it helpful. No, the officer will not read it like that. Okay, I promise you, asylum officers are not going to take the time to just like read through some long report. If you want them to consider it, you have to draw their attention to the exact language, like the sentence or sentences in that report that is relevant to your case and that is helpful to your case. So when I have, for my clients, I do this in my legal brief where I say, look, he went to the police and already once, and they basically said, too bad, we can't help you, deal with that with your family. That's a family issue or something like that. And in my brief, I'll say, this is in line with normal practice for this country. They do this all the time. The reports show conclusively that the police are unwilling to step in and get involved in this kind of situation. And then I'll cite to reports from reputable sources, the ones that the asylum officers themselves are taught to use in researching, because I know what they are because I was an asylum officer. So, and I quote though, but I'll quote in my brief those exact lines that say that. And so then if the officer wants, they can look back to the actual documents that I've included behind it that show where that language appears. But that's not really the important part. The important part is that I've got it in the brief, which they're actually going to read. Okay. They're going to read the lawyer's brief. They're not going to read through 100 pages of report or 200 pages or even 30 pages. So the point is, you've got to find a way to bring the officer's attention to the exact most important point of the supporting documents that you're providing. And I think the best way to do that is through a legal brief. And I think it's something that, someone who's not a lawyer or not a U.S. asylum lawyer is probably going to have a tough time doing really that well, to be honest with you. So that's a reason that you should hire an asylum lawyer. And we help people all over the country. It doesn't matter what state you're in, whether what country you're from or what state in the U.S. you're in now. We have people from all over. Okay, so give us a call. The number up there is 713-909-0401 if you want to talk it over with me in more detail. Okay. Okay, so Mikhail says, can a Russian person can someone from Russia get asylum in the United States based on what's going on abroad? Thank you, Mikhail. By the way, Mikhail, I made a video in Russian recently, but it's focused on Ukrainians. And you might get a kick out of seeing me try to speak Russian, which I used to speak okay, but then I forgot it all when I learned other languages. So I don't really speak it at all anymore. But go to a Banning Asylum Law YouTube channel and you'll see, scroll down. It's a short one. It's like in the shorts. It's a minute long. If you want to see me speak Russian. So to get back to your point, your question, can Russians get asylum here based on what's going on? Well, it's definitely not a guarantee. But let me say this, there are a lot of people here from Russia who oppose the war in Ukraine and who more generally oppose the way that the regime in Russia, the Putin administration, deals with human rights and other issues of state policy. And if the person has spoken out against those things or protested or been involved in political opposition activities, then yeah, they definitely could have probably a pretty good case here. So in fact, I have a client who's in that position who has been involved in opposition politics and posted things publicly on social media that are very critical of the government, and I think they have a good chance to win. So the answer is yes. So okay, Jorge asks, is it too late to hire a lawyer now that I already applied. No, I started to touch on this earlier. Thank you for asking, and let me address it more fully now to tell you why I think um, it's not too late, and there's a lot that you can do, in fact, to strengthen your case. So we help people we have tons of clients who have already applied for asylum, either by themselves or with another lawyer, and then they realize, like, you know what, maybe what I submitted wasn't that great, and there's probably things that can be done to make it better and to prepare for the interview. So we do that, and there's 3 steps. The first is documents. We do what's called a supplemental filing, where we get additional evidence. Even if you already submitted evidence, I promise you, we're going to tell you that there's probably more that you can get that would probably be helpful, and they're going to ask you to try to get it. And I write a legal brief where I explain exactly why the person should get asylum, and I do that based on my experience as a former asylum officer. And then sometimes we have the person write an additional statement or something to add on to their statement. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. It just depends on the circumstances of the case. And so anyway, we package this up and we send it in as a supplemental filing in the case. That's the first step. We want to use that opportunity to set the stage such that the officer is already thinking, before you ever set foot in their room for the interview, they're already thinking, man, based on the documents in this case, what they've submitted, I already think that they're probably eligible for asylum. I'm planning to probably give it to them as long as they show up at the interview and say things that line up with what's in the documents. Okay, that's the goal. Second step is preparation, where we're going to prepare you for the interview. And the key there is a mock interview or practice interview. If you Google Manning Asylum Law and you look at our Google My Business page, you'll see reviews from people that we've helped with this, that it's been really helpful for them, where we do everything you're going to experience on the day of the real interview. And it's really important because then you go to the interview feeling much more confident and comfortable, because you already know what kind of questions they're going to ask. You know what it feels like to be in that position. You know what the different procedures are for the day. All of that makes it less likely that you're going to commit mistakes and more likely that you're going to present your case well. And then finally, the third step is representation. We represent people and make sure their rights are respected, and we advocate for them. And then we explain why they're eligible for asylum at the interview. So those are what we do. Thanks, Jorge, for asking about it. I want to address this question by Adele Rocky. Adele, where are you from? Where is that last name from? That's interesting. I can't quite place it. Seems familiar. All right. Can you explain the 1-year deadline? Is it within 1 year after arriving in the USA, or when the visa expires, counting 1 year after? So, like, for example, yeah, okay. So, thank you, Adele, for the question. I appreciate it. Good question. And the answer is, it's 1 year from your arrival, okay? From your last arrival to the United States. The question is, when I say last arrival, that means most recently when you came. So if someone has come multiple times to the U.S., those prior entries to the United States don't matter for purposes of the 1 year filing deadline. By the way, for those of you who are wondering, the 1 year filing deadline is a rule that says you got to apply for asylum during your first year in the United States. Okay, there's a couple of broad categories of exceptions to this, but generally speaking, you got to apply for asylum within 1 year of your most recent arrival. So it doesn't matter, to go to your question, Adele, it doesn't matter what the visa says. It doesn't matter what your term of admission on your I-94 is, the thing that you get when you enter the country that says, okay, you can stay till this date. Doesn't matter what that is. What matters is, did you apply during the first year after your most recent entry? That's the operative time frame for the 1 year filing deadline. Super important to do that, to file during your first year. Okay. Okay, let's see. That's funny. Hey man, good to see you. Okay, I want to address a question. Joe, were you raising your hand to say hello, or did you want to ask something? If you go to Facebook, you can ask to join me live and show up here on the screen, and you can ask me your question that way. But you can't do that on YouTube, unfortunately. So let me know if you want. Just type in your question. All right. or go to Facebook and request to join me live. Okay. Let me address a question. All right. Roman in New York City. I have a pending asylum since 2015. Now I can apply for TPS as a Ukrainian. Once I get TPS, can I get EB3 from my employer? I arrived in the U.S. legally. Roman, I don't know if you saw the beginning of this live, but I addressed kind of the same issue, which is to say, I don't know. It's a very fact-specific inquiry, which means like the exact details of your case are going to matter for being able to tell you with confidence, yes, you can do it, or no, you can't do it. So it's something that you're going to need to talk with about with a lawyer, and I recommend that you do it with the business immigration lawyer, who's going to help you with the EB3 to try to get more certainty about whether you can do it. Okay, but let me say this: don't give up your asylum. Like, don't renounce or withdraw your asylum case when you apply for TPS. This is a big mistake that I've seen a lot of people make, where they will apply for TPS and say, oh, I don't need my asylum anymore because I'm protected by TPS. Well, TPS is going to end at some point. It may last for many years, as it has in the case of some Central American countries, but it might not. All right. If things end in Ukraine, the war ends, it could end soon, or at the end, it might not be extended. Let's put it that way. So don't give up your asylum. Okay. Do pursue the EB3. Talk to a business immigration lawyer, which I'm not. I do asylum. Talk to a business immigration lawyer about whether you might be able to get that, but keep pursuing the asylum and keep pursuing TPS. In fact, as soon as you get asylum, strike that. As soon as you get TPS, I would push hard to get your asylum interview, because you'll be protected in that moment by TPS. So there's really no risk in having your asylum interview. But you want to strike while the iron's hot, and by that I mean right now there's obvious reasons why you could be harmed in Ukraine, and even if the war has nothing to do with the reasons for which you're eligible for asylum, it's still a factor that at least subconsciously is going to be on the asylum officer's mind, which is to say there's sympathy for Ukraine right now for sure, and that matters. Okay, asylum officers don't make decisions based purely on logic and application of the facts to the law. Definitely not. Okay, there's a lot of emotion that goes into these decisions, just as there is with really any other decision, not just asylum. So I would encourage you then, Roman, to apply for TPS. Don't give up TPS. Don't give up asylum. As soon as you get TPS, you should sue the government to get your asylum interview. Okay. Okay. So I want to address, Joe, your inquiry where you say, all right. So Joe says, your friend submitted an asylum application 6 years ago and got a negative result at the interview in July. But in the interim, while they were waiting for the interview, she married a U.S. citizen and had a marriage interview. And then he says the marriage interview is not decided yet by USCIS. She doesn't want to go to EOIR. EOIR, by the way, is the immigration court. She thinks it's a waste of time. She believes her marriage case will pass. Well, it's not quite that simple. She can't just decide, I don't want to go to court. I'm going to just wait to get my green card through the marriage, after the marriage interview with USCIS. It doesn't work like that. Now, so she's almost certainly in immigration court proceedings. The government's trying to deport her, and she can't get a green card without the judge saying it's okay. The judge either can make a decision on the green card application himself or herself, or they can stop the immigration court proceedings, like get rid of them, terminate them, to allow your friend to be able to get a green card from USCIS. But right now, the way that the jurisdiction works, USCIS cannot give her the green card right now while she is in immigration court. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing is you got to go to immigration court. If you ever have a letter that says you got to go to immigration court, you got to go, or else you'll get a deportation order in your absence, in absentia. So, and you don't want that. All right. So you got to go to immigration court. Okay. You are welcome, Roman. My pleasure. I'm really sorry about what's going on in your country. It's a shame. I spent a month on the Sea of Azov. I studied 3 times in Russia, studied in St. Petersburg. I minored in Russian, studied 3 times in Russian language and art and history and culture in St. Petersburg. And then I spent a month once near Melitopol on the Sea of Azov and a few nights in Kiev. So I love Ukraine. I thought it was great. It's a beautiful country, and I'm really sorry to hear about what's going on. And I'm hoping for the best. It's really tragic. All right. Let me address this one because it's a question that people often ask, something related to it, which is to say about taxes. So Dama, this is a tax question where you say you lived in Wisconsin. Is it okay to file taxes for Wisconsin? Will that affect my case, which is you have a hearing, immigration court hearing coming up in California? So basically, it looks like the question is, should you file the taxes in Wisconsin or should I file taxes for California? Okay. So if you I'm not a tax advisor. I'm not a certified public accountant or a tax lawyer. So I don't know whether you need to pay taxes, but I can say, generally speaking, if you work under most circumstances, you do need to pay taxes, and you need to pay them in the place where you worked or where you earned the money. It sounds like in your case that that's probably Wisconsin. I would, if I were you, I think you should talk to a tax advisor, to like an accountant or a tax lawyer. Probably an accountant would probably be okay in Wisconsin, and they can tell you what you need to file, if you need to file, and what and how, and you should do that. I can't answer with certainty or confidence your question about will it affect your case in California. It depends on what kind of immigration case you have, whether not paying taxes will affect you. In general, you should pay taxes. Okay, it can only help you to pay your taxes. So yeah, in general, a person should pay their taxes, and it will only help their immigration case of any kind to have paid their taxes. Okay. Okay, Adele says, so yeah, I had asked where your last name comes from. Thanks, Adele. I'm a Syrian living in Sweden, but seeking asylum in USA because of homeschooling religious. Okay. Unfortunately, so you got to be in the United States to apply for asylum. You can't apply for asylum from outside of the United States. And I can tell you that if you were to come to the United States, like if you have a visa, or if you're Swedish, if you have a Swedish passport and you can come here on the visa waiver program and get in without a visa, you would almost certainly not win your asylum case based on not being able to do homeschooling in the way you want to in Sweden. Okay, if you're a citizen of Sweden, that is, Sweden's only relevant if you're a citizen of Sweden. If you're not a citizen of Sweden, you have to show that you're eligible for asylum with respect to the country or any country of which you are a citizen, and maybe you have a religious or other kind of claim from those other countries. But if you're a Swede and you're applying for asylum in the United States because you can't do like religious homeschooling in Sweden, you would not win that case in the United States, unfortunately. Okay. You are welcome. If you, like this live stream on Facebook, like the video, as a way to say thanks. If you really want to give thanks in an effective way that will help me and help people find me, people who need our help, go leave a 5-star Google review. Okay. Go to, just Google Manning Asylum Law, and you'll see where you can see our Google page, and you can you can leave a 5-star review and write a sentence or two about how we've helped you or added value, and that would be really helpful. Okay. So, Ice, sorry if I mispronounced that. He says submitted asylum application on February 8, 2022, and haven't received a receipt notice yet. How long does it take? Where are we? It's March 4th, so it's a little over a month. I wouldn't worry yet. That's pretty normal. If you apply it on paper, if you submit it, on paper instead of online, it takes about that long. It takes it takes like usually a month and a half or two to get the receipt notice. So I wouldn't worry yet. And if you don't get it after 2 months, at that point, I would probably you could try calling the contact center that I talked about earlier, the customer service number, and see if they can find it. They probably won't be able to, but I definitely wouldn't worry at 2 months or a month and a half, less or just over a month like we are now. Okay. Okay. Good question. Mohammed says, when you get the I-45 interview, that's the green card interview. After applying for your green card based on asylum, do they ask again about the asylum case, or will it be different? Well, it's definitely different in the sense that they do ask about other things to show that you're eligible for a green card, but they do sometimes ask some questions about your asylum case. Like they're not supposed to. It's not supposed to be a new asylum interview. They're not supposed to be determining again whether you are eligible for asylum. But if they have some reason to believe that you are not, because you are no longer a refugee, because you no longer meet the definition of a refugee, meaning like you no longer qualify for asylum, or if there's some sign that you cheated or lied to get your asylum in the first place, then you're going to have a problem. And I actually help people with this fairly often. I've seen this happening a lot lately where an asylee applies for a green card. So 1 year after asylum, you're eligible to apply for your green card, right? Based on your asylee status. And I've seen people go to this interview and they get confronted with things that USCIS at least thinks are inconsistencies. Like they'll listen to what you're saying at the green card interview, and they'll compare it with things that were in your asylum application materials or things that you said at your asylum interview, because they have access to the notes that the asylum officer is typing out during your asylum interview, and they'll be comparing these different things. Okay. And so when they see an inconsistency, they'll sometimes say, oh, this doesn't match up. We think that you're not credible. In fact, we think that you were lying to get your asylum in the first place. Therefore, we're going to send the file back to the asylum office, and they're going to try to take your asylum away. Now, this is called a termination case, where the asylum office tries to terminate your asylee status. And when that happens, they give you an interview where, first of all, they put in a letter, they explain the reasons, but they don't really explain that much. It's just kind of vague usually. It doesn't really give you a fair opportunity to understand or defend yourself. But then they schedule an interview where you go to the asylum office and they ask you these questions to try to establish that you were lying to them. You have a chance to defend yourself and explain why you weren't lying or why they're wrong in thinking that you were lying. But it's hard to win. It's really hard to win. So usually when they get to that position, they've decided we're going to take this person's asylee status away, and that's all there is to it. So the point to the question then, Mohammed, first of all, thank you for your question. What I want to stress for you, Mohammed, is that you should be very familiar with everything you submitted as part of your asylum case, and with what you said. How do you do that? How do you become familiar with what you submitted and what you said? Do a Freedom of Information Act request. FOIA, FOIA. They call it a FOIA for its acronym in English, or for its initials in English, FOIA. That you can get a copy of your immigration file, basically, where you can see everything that you submitted, and you can see the officer's notes from the interview. They usually redact or black out some of the stuff, including the officer's decision that they have to write up, where they explain what their decision is and why, like how their reasoning is for getting there. they usually black out most of that, but the notes where they show their questions and your answers, you should be able to see. So it's really a good idea to review all that before your green card interview. We've been seeing it a lot lately that USCIS is aggressively going after people to take away their asylee status based on things that come up during the green card interview later. All right. Oase says, thank you. You're very welcome, Oase. It's my pleasure. If anyone wants to call and get more detailed conversation going, where I can speak more specifically to your situation and tell you what I think and whether we might be able to help you, then let me know. Call us at 713-909-0401. For Manning Asylum Law, Brian Manning at 713-909-0401. Okay, so David S. asks, how long is the waiting time for the asylum interview decision? I just heard the processing rate slowed down. Is that true? No, I haven't heard that the processing rate has slowed down. In fact, I was involved in a stakeholders meeting recently with the asylum division at USCIS, and I don't think that case processing has slowed down. The backlog of cases keeps growing, but I don't think case processing has slowed down. In fact, I think it's probably going to speed up because they're starting to do more remote interviews where the officer isn't even in the office. And that way they can, because of space considerations in the office, they can do more interviews in a day. To get back to the question of how long, what's the timing? How long is it? So they tried to do it within a few weeks of doing the interview. And in fact, the other day they said that they have met their target. I think it was like, I can't remember, it's like 4 or 6 weeks right now is the target for after the interview. They tried to mail it to you in, and they said they've met that in some high percentage of cases. They've done that, but it's no guarantee. No guarantee. It could be sooner. Minimum 2 weeks. Could be a lot longer for most people. But average, I've been seeing them lately in like a month and a half or so, about 4 to 6 weeks. Afghans are going quickly. The Afghans who were brought here to the United States as part of what they call Operation Allies Welcome, the one that were transported by U.S. military to the United States, those are supposed to be done within 45 days of application. So those are going pretty quickly. I've had a couple problems with those, but they are going pretty quickly. Okay. Yeah, thanks. No, you're welcome. You're welcome. It's my pleasure. David, thank you. If you want to say thanks properly, not properly, but if you want to say things in the most helpful way, you can go here. I'm posting in the chat a link to our Google review page. So if you want to say thanks for, if you think that we've added value and helped, then give us a 5-star review if you think it's merited. All right. And in a sentence or two, explain how we helped you. All right. So you should see in the description a link for that. I'm going to put my office number in the description as well. So feel free to give us a call to set up a consultation. I think I'm booked out for this week. We've had a bunch of people who wanted to get consultations and get help with their case. So I think I'm booked out for the week, but I'm going to try to open up some more spots just so I can be sure to get with everyone who needs help. So maybe next week there should be some openings. Okay. So yeah, come over and check us out there. All right. And okay, I've got to go in just a couple of minutes. Brian, you're always asking about this. Brian always wants me to talk about employment-based green card. I don't know, man. It's not my thing. I can't talk about it. intelligibly. Brian, my philosophy is that you should go to the expert who focuses on the thing that you need help with. So in the medical field, if you have a heart condition, you don't need to go to a brain surgeon or a brain doctor, right? You need to go to the doctor who focuses on heart issues. I focus on Asylum. Okay. I mean, sure, I know things, I know about other areas, but it's not something that I'm in every day. Like you want a lawyer on your side that works every single day in the specific area where you need help. So if you want an EB3, you got to go to an EB3 lawyer, all right, or any kind of employment-based green card. Sorry, go to an employment-based immigration lawyer. Okay, that's what you should do. If you want asylum help, then I think you should come to me. That's what I do. That's where I have unique experience. As far as I know, I'm the only immigration lawyer who has worked as an immigration officer. Sorry, I'm the only immigration lawyer who has worked as an immigration officer for both of the government's two main agencies for refugee and asylum affairs, with the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security. So that's an area that I think I have unique value to add to. So let me know if you want to talk asylum, Brian, or anyone else. But thank you for the comment and the questions. Hey, Sunday. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for joining us. Okay, I got to go. Feel free to leave more comments in the questions and I'll try to get to them, okay? And if not, we'll be live again soon. And if you're ready to take the next step and try to strengthen your case or have the best chance possible for securing your future in the United States through asylum, then give us a call today at 713-909-0401. Brian Manning, political asylum lawyer, former asylum officer, and would love to support you in your asylum journey. So call us at 713-909-0401 and have a great rest of the week, everyone. And I will see you later.